What happens when one of the world's most controversial royals sits down with America's most respected morning host, only to clash in a way that shocks millions? This wasn't just another CBS interview. This was Prince Harry face-to-face with Gayle King, and what started as a polished conversation spiraled into arrogance, tension, and a showdown nobody expected. By the time it was over, the studio was silent, the audience stunned, and Gayle's patience tested in a way viewers had never seen before. The CBS Morning studio glowed with its signature orange and blue backdrop, the cameras in perfect position, the crew moving with quiet precision. It was supposed to be another routine, high-profile interview, the kind Gayle King had conducted for decades. She knew how to make even the most difficult guests feel comfortable, how to balance warmth with sharp professionalism. But today wasn't just any guest. Today, across from her, sat Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, royal exile, global celebrity, and one of the most polarizing figures of the past decade. Harry entered the studio in a dark navy suit, tieless, his reddish beard neatly trimmed. He looked calm, maybe even smug, as he adjusted his jacket and settled into the chair opposite Gayle. The audience, small but carefully selected, gave polite applause. Harry's expression barely shifted. He nodded faintly, then leaned back as though he owned the room. Gayle smiled warmly, her tone as professional as ever. "Good morning, and thank you so much for being here with us, Prince Harry. We're honored to have you." Harry gave a quick half-smile. "Well, I figured you could use the ratings." The audience chuckled nervously. Gayle's smile didn't falter, but she noted the edge immediately. She had expected charm. Instead, she got sarcasm. "I assure you, we do just fine," Gayle replied with grace. "But we are glad to have you here. You've spoken a lot recently about building a new life in California, about the importance of independence. How has that transition been for you and your family?" Harry crossed his arms, the corner of his mouth curling. "How has it been? It's been exactly what I wanted. Sunshine, space, people leaving me alone. Well, at least until journalists like you start poking around again." The line stung, but Gayle kept her composure. "Of course, the public has always been curious about your story. It comes with the territory." "Ah, the territory," Harry muttered, rolling his eyes. "The so-called privilege of being born into a cage. People think I should be grateful. But let's be honest, Gayle, most of them wouldn't survive a week in my shoes." The room went still. Already viewers could sense where this was heading. Gayle adjusted her papers, her voice calm. "Well, since you mention it, let's talk about that background. Many people admired your mother, Princess Diana. They see her legacy in you. How do you feel about carrying that forward?" For a brief second, Harry's jaw tightened. Then came the smirk. "Here we go. The Diana question. Every time. Look, with all due respect, Gayle, I don't need to be constantly reminded of my mother to validate who I am. She's not a soundbite for your morning TV segment." The audience gasped softly. Gayle inhaled, choosing her words carefully. "I certainly didn't mean to reduce her to that. I only wanted to know how you reflect on her influence in your life." Harry shrugged dramatically. "Influence? My mother would have told me to get out, and I did. End of story. But of course, you want me to wax poetic so your viewers can cry over their morning coffee." The arrogance in his tone was undeniable. Gayle leaned forward slightly, her patience holding for now. "All right, Harry, let's bring it to the present. You've spoken openly about your relationship with Meghan. How are things between you now?" Harry's face changed only slightly, tightened lips, narrowed eyes, but the answer was swift. "Things are fine, perfect in fact. And before you try, you won't get any juicy gossip from me. Meghan and I are solid, so don't waste your time fishing for cracks." The words were clipped, almost scolding. The audience murmured uneasily. Gayle maintained her calm smile, though her eyes flickered with steel. "I wasn't fishing," she said smoothly. "I was simply asking what many of your supporters are curious about. You and Meghan have been through a lot in the public eye." Harry waved a hand dismissively. "Supporters, critics, same thing. Everyone wants a piece, but Meghan's stronger than all of them, stronger than you, stronger than your colleagues, stronger than anyone sitting in judgment." It was a jab, and Gayle felt it. Still, she nodded politely. I can see she means a great deal to you. Harry leaned forward now, his voice carrying that unmistakable arrogance. She means more than your headlines, more than your ratings, and more than the tired questions you've prepared. So let's not pretend you're asking out of concern. The silence in the studio was suffocating. Even the camera operators froze for a moment, unsure if this was part of the script or the beginning of something explosive. Gayle adjusted her glasses, her voice calm but firmer than before. Well, Harry, I can promise you this. My questions are asked with respect, as they are for every guest. But you are in a unique position, and viewers are deeply invested in your story. Harry smirked again. My story? My story is mine. Not the palace's, not Meghan's, not yours. And if people don't like it, too bad. I didn't come here to play the game. Gayle held his gaze, her face perfectly composed. Inside, she knew part two of this interview was about to take a very sharp turn. The first cracks had shown. Harry wasn't here to open up. He was here to fight. The studio lights burned steady, casting their warm glow over the set, but the air felt heavier now. What had started as a polished, if slightly tense interview had drifted into choppier waters. Gayle King, one of America's most composed and trusted anchors, shuffled her notes with a grace that belied her inner calculation. She knew she was losing control of the interview's rhythm, but she also knew what her audience expected. Questions that mattered, questions that went deeper. And opposite her sat Harry, leaning back, legs crossed, arms folded, the faintest smirk plastered on his face. His posture wasn't just relaxed, it was defiant, almost mocking. Gayle began carefully, her voice calm but stealthy. Harry, your book Spare gave the public an unprecedented look into your life, your struggles with the royal institution, your relationships with your family. Some praised your honesty, others felt it exposed too much. Looking back now, do you have any regrets about what you shared? Harry chuckled darkly. Regrets? No, I regret nothing. Every single word needed to be said. If people are uncomfortable with the truth, that's their problem, not mine. And frankly, Gayle, the ones who criticize the loudest are the ones who never lived a day in my world. Gayle nodded slowly. Still, many felt it revealed very personal moments about your father and brother, things some say should have remained private. Harry tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly. Private, please. Nothing about my life has ever been private. From the day I was born, my life was consumed, sold, dissected by people like you, journalists. And now suddenly I'm supposed to protect their privacy? My father, my brother, they didn't protect mine. The audience shifted uneasily. Gayle held his gaze unfazed. Harry, when you wrote about physical altercations with your brother, about your father's perceived failures, some interpreted that as airing family grievances rather than healing them. Do you think those details helped the situation? Or, Harry cut her off with a sharp laugh. Healing. Do you seriously think William or my father have ever once considered healing anything? Let me make this clear. I don't owe them silence. If my brother shoves me into a dog bowl, people deserve to know. If my father chooses the institution over his own son, people deserve to know. That's not betrayal. That's survival. His words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The audience let out a stunned murmur. Gayle adjusted her glasses, her voice still even. Survival is important, but some would say survival can coexist with compassion. Do you feel you've left room for reconciliation? Harry leaned forward suddenly, his voice sharp. Why is it always my job to reconcile? Why am I the one asked to extend compassion? Where's the compassion for me? For Meghan? For our children? You want reconciliation? Ask my brother why he sold me out. Ask my father why he let the press destroy my wife. Don't sit here and suggest I'm the one holding a grudge. The room grew still. Gayle paused, then tried again, softer. Let's talk about Meghan, then. You've both faced enormous pressure, enormous scrutiny. How is your relationship now after all of this? Harry's expression shifted, sharp, almost biting. My relationship with Meghan is strong, stronger than anything you could imagine. And before you even try, no, you're not getting a headline here about cracks or troubles. We're fine, better than fine. So if that was your angle, Gayle, you can move on. It was the second time he had accused her of fishing for gossip. Gayle inhaled slowly, her patience steady, though her jaw tightened. I wasn't suggesting anything negative, Harry, but the public often wonders how couples withstand that kind of pressure. Harry snapped. The public, always the public. Let me be crystal clear, Gayle. Meghan and I don't exist to provide your viewers with soap opera fodder. You won't catch us fighting in the supermarket aisles for your entertainment. We're not a storyline for you to milk. The audience gasped softly. Gayle kept her composure, but her tone sharpened. I understand, but as public figures, questions about your marriage, your work, your family, they come with the territory. Harry leaned back, smirk still in place. Ah, yes, the territory. Convenient excuse for endless intrusion. Do you realize how arrogant that sounds? To assume I owe you or anyone else updates on my marriage. You're not entitled to it, Gayle. None of you are. The temperature in the room seemed to rise. Gayle, still seated upright, decided to shift gears. All right, let's bring it back to the monarchy itself. You've said many times you wanted to step back, to find freedom. Yet you still use the title, you still profit from the connection. How do you respond to critics who say you left but never really left? That question struck Harry like a spark to tinder. His smirk dropped, replaced with a look of irritation. Critics, always critics. People love to accuse me of cashing in, but let's be honest. What else do they expect? I was born into a system I didn't choose. I left it. I built a life outside of it. If people are jealous, I can write a book or make a Netflix deal, and that's their issue, not mine. And as for the title, what do you want me to do, toss it in the bin? It's mine whether they like it or not. His words dripped with arrogance, dismissing the very idea of accountability. Gayle placed her papers down gently. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath now. Harry, with respect, many would say you've positioned yourself as both victim and beneficiary of the royal institution. You speak about escaping the system, but you've also used it to your advantage. Harry scoffed audibly. Oh, here it comes, the lecture. Let me save you the trouble, Gayle. I don't care. Not about critics, not about headlines, and not about your judgment. You don't understand what it's like to live in that family. So don't pretend you do. The audience murmured louder now. Gayle's patience was clearly being tested. Her lips tightened, though her posture remained composed. She knew the moment was coming, the point where she would no longer let the arrogance slide. And Harry? He looked almost amused, as though he was daring her to challenge him. The storm was building. The clock on the studio wall ticked 5 careful seconds that nobody heard. Cameras hummed. A boom mic drifted imperceptibly closer. The audience sat in a hush that felt less like silence and more like a held breath. Gayle didn't touch her notes. She simply folded her hands, the gesture of a teacher deciding whether to let a student talk himself into a corner or to take back the room. Let me try this another way, she said, voice even, velvet over steel. You've said you left to protect your family's peace. Today your tone doesn't sound peaceful. It sounds combative. What changed? Harry smirked again, a practiced, lopsided thing. What changed is that I'm tired of people like you pretending you're neutral while asking weaponized questions. You want a confession, not a conversation. Gayle's gaze didn't waver. I want clarity. You want clips, he shot back. You want me to hand you your headline. A single laugh escaped someone in the back row, quick, nervous, swallowed. Gayle ignored it. All right, she said, leaning in a degree. Clarity then. You've said you want nothing to do with the firm, yet you trademark brands built on titles. You document your royal past for streaming platforms, and you narrate your trauma in a best-selling memoir. When does the leaving begin? Harry tilted his head, a flash of irritation crossing his face. When people who never had to survive my childhood stop demanding I erase it to make them comfortable. Surviving it, Gayle repeated, calm as a metronome. Or monetizing it. A low ripple went through the audience. Harry's eyes sharpened. You don't get to put a price on my pain, he said. You didn't live it. And the people you wrote about didn't consent to you setting their price either, Gayle replied softly. Yet here we are. He barked a humorless laugh. Consent? That's rich coming from a press that ran my life by committee. Spare me. Gayle inhaled, then set her palms on the table. Still, open, grounding. Let's talk specifics. Your brother, your father. Do you want reconciliation? Harry's shrug was theatrical. If they want to behave like family instead of board members, sure, but I'm not begging them for a meeting to be blamed for their choices. That era is over. Do you see how that answer might read as arrogant to people who haven't burned their family on a book tour? Gayle asked. He leaned forward, pupils pinpricks of challenge. Do you see how your question reads as sanctimonious from a woman who hasn't had to choose between the truth and a gilded lie? Gayle didn't blink. A lot of people choose the truth every day without a ghostwriter. Harry. The words landed, quiet, clean, unadorned. The audience reacted like a flock startled into the air. A collective inhale, then stillness. Harry sat back, jaw tight. So that's what this is. You're going to do the dignified disappointment thing. We expected more from you, Harry. What I expected, Gayle said, was less contempt for the questions and more respect for the viewers who buy your book, stream your shows, and still want to understand the person behind the product. My life isn't a product, he snapped. Everything about today says otherwise, she replied, not unkindly. He scoffed. You really do like the sound of your own morality, don't you? Gayle's hands left the table. She folded them again. Deliberate, decisive. Harry, I've been doing this a long time. I've interviewed presidents, survivors, whistleblowers, and yes, plenty of celebrities. I have patience for discomfort. I do not have patience for disdain. You came here and agreed to be accountable for your words. I'm holding you to that. Accountable to what? Your network? His laugh scraped this time. You're not my head mistress. No, Gayle said, and the change in her tone was unmistakable. Measured firmness hardening into a boundary. But this is my studio, not your palace, not your press pen, and not your confessional booth. And with respect, you are not a prince in here. You're a guest, which means we can have a conversation like adults, or we can end it now. The sentence landed with a thud that traveled. Somewhere a camera operator adjusted grip with a tiny creak. Harry's stare flicked to the audience, then back, something wounded sparking beneath the glare. So, that's the threat? Obey the host or lose the platform, he said, voice low. It's not a threat, Gayle said. It's a reminder. You've been swinging at questions instead of answering them. You've belittled motives you haven't earned the right to judge. And every time I ask about responsibility, you throw up the drawbridge of grievance. I'm asking you to lower it. Harry's jaw worked. You have no idea what it's like to carry a mother's funeral behind your eyes while cameras count your tears. My friend, Gayle answered gently, I know what grief looks like. I also know what weaponized grief sounds like. They are not the same. The room seemed to tilt, the way a stage does when a set piece moves and the audience notices only the breeze of the change. Harry's bravado faltered, not gone, but thinned, and for a bare second he looked younger, a boy fighting a battle he didn't start. The second passed. He squared his shoulders. Fine. What do you want? A tidy little soundbite about William? About my father? You want me to say I'm sorry so America can clip it for TikTok and call it growth? I want honesty without contempt, Gayle said. Start there. Silence stretched. It might have become an answer. Instead, Harry's mouth twisted. Honesty. All right. My brother is a polished mask stapled to a duty he worships. My father is a man who learned to hug the crown tighter when the people closest to him are bleeding. And your industry, since you're so keen on honesty, feeds on that blood like it's breakfast. There. Clarity. Gayle's expression didn't change, but the air changed with it. Cooler. Thinner. And you? What do you worship? I worship keeping my wife and children safe. And your anger? She asked. He smiled without warmth. My anger pays for security. Gayle absorbed it. That may be the truest thing you have said today. He bristled. You want more? I used the book to tell the truth. I did the series to control the narrative for once in my life. I left because staying meant burying myself alive for a country that prefers its princes mute. Good, Gayle said. Now try it without sneering at the people listening. Harry's hand tightened on the arm of his chair. You love the word sneer. Maybe you mistake refusal for rudeness. I don't, she said quietly. Rudeness sounds like this, implying I'm here to collect gossip when I've asked you nothing you haven't already sold. Suggesting my questions are tabloid talking points when they're pulled from your own pages. Dismissing an audience that has, frankly, afforded you more grace than you have offered anyone today. That's rudeness. The audience broke its silence with scattered applause. Tentative, then steadier. The sound of a room voting with its palms. Harry's eyes flashed, a startled anger at the betrayal of the crowd. He waited it out, breathing through his nose. Gayle didn't press the advantage. She used it to pivot. Let's try Meghan again, she said, softening the edges. Not as a headline, as a human being who shares a life with you. How has she made you better? Harry opened his mouth, then closed it. His gaze flicked down, then up. When he spoke, it was softer, less armored. She reminded me I'm not the institution's property. She made home a verb, not a place. And she refuses to let me disappear into duty or rage. The audience exhaled in one long, relieved thread. Gayle gave him the smallest nod. Thank you. He shrugged, defensive returning. Don't assign her as my handler, though. That's your press's favorite trick. I didn't, Gayle said. I asked how love changed you. You answered. That's what this could have been the whole time. His jaw set again, pride like a reflex. You keep trying to teach me a lesson. I keep trying to find the man behind the grievance, she replied. You keep handing me the crown. A beat. 2. Then Harry leaned forward, elbows on knees, posture suddenly predatory again. You've wanted to say it since the top of the show. Go on, Gayle, say the line. Tell me I'm not a prince here. Her lips parted into the faintest, saddest smile. You're not a prince here, Harry. There it was, the line, the boundary, the frame. The audience didn't clap this time. They didn't dare. The words didn't need applause. They needed air to cool on. Harry laughed. One hard exhale. Right, civics lesson over. What next? You going to ask whether I embellished military details? Whether the frost-bitten anecdote was too much? Whether I regret mentioning substances? Therapy? The lot. Gayle's voice regained that anchor cadence that could turn a ship. No, I'm going to ask whether you want to be understood more than you want to be right. He blinked. It was, unmistakably, a hit. For a fleeting instant, the interview might have found a gentler lane. Harry's shoulders loosened by a fraction. Gayle's tone warmed a degree. Then a producer's cough clipped the moment, and Harry seized on it like an exit ramp. Do you always do this? He asked, the mockery returning to cushion vulnerability. Drag a confession to the water. See if it drinks? Gayle didn't flinch. Do you always interrupt yourself right before you say something real? A crackle went through the audience. Harry's nostrils flared. He stood, not a dramatic lurch, just an abrupt decision that scraped the chair legs across the floor. A few people in the front row startled. Harry, Gayle said, restrained but firm, please sit. He remained standing, the studio lights painting a sharp corona across his shoulders. I think we're done. Gayle stood too, measured, unafraid. We're not finished until we close the segment. That's not royal protocol. That's television. Have a seat. He stared at her, weighing the cost of staying against the power of leaving. The room waited. Somewhere behind camera 2, a floor manager raised a hand, then lowered it. No one wanted to be the first to move. Gayle's voice dropped, velvet giving way to the pure authority of a professional who had earned it. Harry, sit. We'll end properly, or you can walk and let that say what it says. He hesitated, jaw clenched, then sat, a grudging, heavy thud. The audience released a breath they didn't know they'd held. Thank you, Gayle said, reclaiming the space with a calm that felt like a roof after rain. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll talk about service. The work you say matters most. And whether any of this, her hand indicated the air between them, helps it. Harry didn't answer. He stared at the middle distance, lips a hard line. The red tally light went dark. Studio sound dipped into the cotton wool quiet of off-air. A PA appeared with water, another adjusted a cable near Gayle's chair. Nobody spoke to Harry, nobody needed to. The next 5 minutes would decide whether he stayed a guest or staged an exit. The storm hadn't passed. It had only changed color. The cameras came back from commercial, but the studio felt different. Like everyone inside knew the ground was about to split. Gayle King faced the lens with professional calm. "We're back with Prince Harry," she said, her tone smooth but her eyes steady. "Let's continue." Harry leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, jaw tight. His earlier smirk had drained into something harsher, defiance mixed with fatigue. Gayle asked one last question, gently but firmly. "Harry, after everything you've shared, do you think you've built a life beyond the crown, or are you still living off its shadow?" That did it. Harry shot up from his chair, glaring. "I don't need this. Not from you, not from anyone. I'm not your headline, Gayle. I'm done." Gasps rippled through the audience. Producers froze. Security edged forward. Gayle didn't flinch. She simply placed her papers down and met his fury with quiet authority. "Then walk. But remember, you're not a prince here. You're just a man who couldn't handle the questions." Harry's face reddened, his lips pressed thin, but he said nothing. He pulled off his mic, dropped it onto the chair, and stormed off the set. The sound of the studio doors closing echoed like a gavel. Gayle turned back to the audience, offering a small, regretful smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the hardest part of this job is separating the story people want to tell from the truth they try to avoid. I'm sorry you had to see it end this way, but you deserve honesty. That's what we stand for here." The audience applauded, hesitant at first, then stronger. The broadcast faded to black. It was over. The prince had walked away, and Gayle King had stood her ground. What do you think? Did Harry storm out because he couldn't handle tough questions? Or was this interview unfair from the start? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story like this one. Until next time.